a good person leading the way with the other policies that can be put into place. You have a beautiful facility. You have good work in the area of tobacco prevention, and we're really proud to have you on as a team working with the state to provide prevention to all of your members here. Katie's going to tell you a little bit about an activity we're going to be putting on this afternoon, so please join in on that. But with that, I want to say miigwech, marci, and thanks very much for having me come and for teaching me the word thank you. So.
I'll be quick. First off, there's a big poster on the back wall, and I put some on the tables. It's called Ball of Hope. And in the back, there's little pieces of paper like this that signify a brick. And we want people to write, it can be your personal tobacco story, if you quit, if you know somebody that has been affected by tobacco, write your story on it, and we're going to build a wall. When you do that, if you're back on my table, get a red ticket from me, and we're going to draw door prizes throughout the event for that. We're also going to sell 50-50 tickets, which are the blue tickets. So they'll be $1 a piece or $5 for an arm's length. And we're going to use the proceeds for that to help with the cost of the GOA this year. And last but not least, our good friends from Rocky Mountain, Montana Tribal Leaders Council are here. I don't know, some of you may have gotten calls already, but we're doing a community health assessment survey that has started. There's flyers in the back. If you get a call, please take the time to answer all their questions. It's going to give us a better picture of the Little Shell community's health and where our needs are. So we're actually going to give gift cards, $20 gift cards to the first 100 completed surveys. And you guys can go back to the table. They have flyers and more information on that, as well as information on our health program. Oh yeah, I don't have that one up here. Thank you so much. And one last one. There'll be some of us running around here with this Ask Me button. There's forms on the table. We have tobacco facts. So come and ask us. We'll give you a tobacco fact and then we'll sign your sheet. You need 6 signatures on this sheet of 8 to be qualified for a drawing for a Windows tablet. And I'm going to give that away today. So the entry box for this one is at my table. And the door prize tickets go on Daryl's table in the back. And then we will collect the 50-50 tickets in another bucket.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to introduce our first guest speaker, or second guest speaker, excuse me. I need to cite our tobacco program. This gentleman has worked a number of years in education, Indian education, and has been a teacher, coach, principal, superintendent. Worked for the Bureau of Indian Affairs as an area education director, and has currently served a number of years as the president of the Turtle Mountain Community College. And we've invited Mr. Jim Davis to come and share some of his experiences with us regarding the language program at the Turtle Mountain Community College, and share other thoughts with us. So please welcome Dr. Jim Davis.
Here's my speech. Hang in there, okay? Just kidding. Thank you, Gerald, my friend, my brother, and Honorable Chairman, Mr. Gray, and council members. Thank you for inviting me to this special occasion. I bring greetings from the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. I'm sure that there's a lot of relatives and acquaintances here sitting in this room this morning. You know, when I was asked to come to Great Falls, I was excited, and I was asked to bring one person along with me. I had one person, and he said, well, I have to tell you that I was scheduled to do a ceremony back home. He said, so I'm going to have to back out. So I went to my other friend, Gene LaFramboise, who some of you know here, and I said, well, would you come? And he said, yes, be glad to. And all of a sudden he gets sick. Yesterday morning, or maybe Thursday morning, he calls me, and I know he was sick because he just couldn't talk, and I thought, well, it's probably best to stay home, but those two gentlemen really wanted to be here as well. Bonjour, Tanchi, Kiwao, Tansi, Kiwao, Bumatan. You know, those are all greetings again from our different languages. A good morning thing. But I want to take a few minutes. I asked Gerald Sr., I said, well, how much time do I have? Because this is a topic I can talk about for an hour, probably because I come from a tribal college, you know, the Turtle Mountain Community College. And we're very humbled, respectful, proud of our tribal college. You know, we are one of the original tribal colleges in this country. One of the original 6. And for a little over 40 years, we've been pursuing a lot of good things. And of course, one of the goals of every tribal college is the preservation of your language and culture. And we've been working at that for quite some time, well, from day one, even before day one. Because in the late 60s, you know, there was a recognition amongst our people that our people were not, a couple things. They weren't going to college, and there were some issues facing our culture and language. So the idea of starting a tribal college came from the grassroots. You know, the people, the elders, the younger people, you know, pursued very hard a lot of the work that they achieved. And the rewards that they see today, coming from our people, looking at what we're doing, what we're going to be doing, you know, is something that we never dreamed of probably back in the 50s and 40s and early 60s, even into the mid-60s. But it was in the late 60s when we started to talk about this, because there was one tribal college, the Navajo College on the Navajo Nation that started out. And of course the Haskell Indian Nations University in Lawrence, Kansas. And also, of course, the United Tribes Technical College, which was really not a college at that time back in the late 60s, but ended up to be a tribal college. The movement of the tribal colleges, again, was premised on the fact that there was a real strong need to preserve and perpetuate, revive, if you want to use that word as well, the tribal languages. And tribal colleges across the country, 36 of us that have worked very hard together independently, and glad to hear that we now have a role to play, a small role to play with the people in this community, from Canada and from Rocky Boy, because there's a lot of similarities there. With the tribal colleges, the word we use, or the phrase we use now, and I can see that being done here, and it has been done by all means. It's nation building. Nation building. In other words, you have a group of people in this state, in this area of the state, that are looking to build your nation, your tribal nation. And it's been that way for years with our tribal colleges. It's nation building. You know, of course, we look to higher education because, again, in the 60s up until about the late 60s or mid 60s, we probably had less than 10 of our people finish college. Less than 10. Today we can say we probably have close to 10,000. A lot of those reasons are because we have a tribal college. You know, we have 3 4-year degree programs at Turtle Mountain. Elementary education, secondary science education, and early childhood education. And I've said this many times publicly. Our programs, those 3 programs, are some of the best, if not the best, in the state of North Dakota. For 3 reasons. And I see this community, you know, pursuing that and eventually realizing that a part of your community. But the 3 reasons is the language, a strength of our 3 or 4-year degree programs, the culture, and the socioeconomic situations we're faced with. You graduate 4-year degree people, teachers, and you send them out to these schools that are educating Native students and non-Native for that reason, but you find them to be the best teachers. So I can see that happening here. I really, truly can see that happening in this community. Because once you get your federal recognition, you can pursue a tribal college. Because back home, on our reservation, and I'm sure that's true at Rocky Boy, with Stonechild College, that if it wasn't for tribal colleges, you know, a lot of our students would not go on to higher education. About 60% of our people that enroll at our college would not attend college. 60% would not. Today we have close to 4,000 who graduated from our college, and probably close to 20,000 who have taken classes there. And of course, a lot of our people have graduated from our college, gone on to get their masters and doctorates, and you name the field, and they're in that field. Lawyers, attorneys, medical doctors, teachers, nurses, you name them. But they're throughout the country. But the good thing about it is that a lot of these graduates are at home, serving our community. It's not easy for tribal colleges. You know, when you talk about preserving the language and culture, it's really not an easy task because there's a lot of barriers. You know, funding is a problem, but there's always a way. I know in working with Gerald Sr., you know, we always seem to find a way at Rocky Boy to get things done. And if you have the determination and the willingness, you know, to do that, the sky's the limit, basically. So when we pursue our programs at Turtle Mountain Community College, we look at soft money programs. Unfortunately, we're very much underfunded, unlike mainstream institutions. You know, we're supposed to be getting $8,000 per FTE, full-time student at our college, and all of the colleges. You know, we get a little under $6,000 per student, but we find a way. We always find a way. And I think that's true for Native people in general. You know, when you're determined, you find a way to get things done. You know, state funding, you know, as an example, another example of what we've done, and I can see that being done here, and you've done some of that already in Montana with the tribal colleges, but, you know, we've pursued a couple of different times state funding for what we call our non-beneficiary students, non-Indian students. We got that funded through the legislature with some pretty much flying colors. It didn't start out that way by any means, but it took a lot of hard work. But we got funding for our non-Native students. A year ago, we went in and asked for some more money, and you know, we had to strategize though. Anytime you're doing something, you have to have a plan. You have to have a strategy. And like Gerald Sr. and of course the board here, are always saying, you gotta have a team effort. It's got to be a team. If it's not a team effort, it's very difficult and sometimes impossible to achieve those goals. But when we went in this last time in 2013 to pursue the state legislature, we had a strategy. We developed it. We worked it. We massaged it. Got it done. One of the things we did was, with the 5 tribal colleges in North Dakota, we let the people know in North Dakota, we are taxpayers. We contribute to the economy of North Dakota. Combined, the 5 tribal colleges in North Dakota contribute to the North Dakota economy in 2012 $181 million. Turtle Mountain Community College by itself generated in 2012 to the economy of North Dakota $36.1 million in that 1 year. So again, the strategy that you have to develop with your preservation of your languages and culture, you have to have that plan. You have to have a strategy. You have to have a team approach. You have to have a positive attitude. You got to be willing to ask people, for things that you probably need. So the whole thing about preservation is very, very critical. If there's one thing about or maybe 2 things that are important to our tribal college, it is the preservation of our languages and culture. It is the preservation of who we are. It is important that we have opportunities for our people to get an education. Because poverty on reservations, and I don't know about here locally, but poverty on reservations is extreme. And we try to play an active part in that effort at Turtle Mountain Community College. But there's some things that aren't working out for us for some reason. But I think we'll work those out eventually. At Turtle Mountain Community College, we have partners with the North Dakota University system. We do a very good job working with them and vice versa. And again, the strategy of partnering with other institutions, other organizations, because a lot of other organizations have the same need. So in your case here, you need to partner with other organizations. And I'm very happy to know and be asked to participate in a collaboration or a partnership with the institutes from Canada and with Rocky Boy and with the people here. Very much needed. Because I know how we started. We started small. We had to collaborate. We had to collaborate with another college in our community. We did that, and now today, it has been a big success for us. So the preservation of that language is very critical, to who we are. If we don't know who we are, we really can't do much with the things we really want to do. And I think with your data collection and the things that you're doing, signing up more people to be members of the tribe is very critical as well. Because that will identify you as somebody legitimate. I've followed your story. I lived at Rocky Boy for a couple of years. I came to Great Falls once a month, visiting my uncle who lived here, and some of you might know him, Morris DeLorme, and his wife lived here for 25 years. But I followed your story. But like your chairman said, you're getting close. And I really have confidence that that's going to happen. But then once that happens, then you're free to do a lot more. And to do a lot more for your children, your grandchildren, the people of this community. And I'm not just saying the Native community. What people get as non-Native people from Native people is something that you need to think about as well. Because understanding Native people and who you are and who we are, tells a lot about us being critical to this society. Give an example of Turtle Mountain Community College. Our senator from North Dakota a year ago said the biggest untold story in higher education in North Dakota are the tribal colleges. As Indian people, we have a way of not wanting to boast about ourselves. But there are times when you have to do that. You have to force yourself to do it, I guess. Because if you want something, you need something to collaborate with people, we need to do those kinds of things. And I've learned to do that because of my job. When I first worked with the people at Rocky Boy, I really didn't have a philosophy of Indian education, although I grew up on a reservation and went to school and graduated from a school. But when I came to Rocky Boy, the things we did there, headed by Gerald Sr. and the board, it really solidified my philosophy of Indian education, because it was so important to know who you are, what you're all about. And, we still have challenges, but, it wouldn't be fun, if there were not challenges. It wouldn't be exciting. There wouldn't be a lot of adventure, I'll say, if we didn't have challenges. People ask me, a lot of times, well, how are you doing? I said, no. Are you behaving? I said, no. I like a little bit of adventure in my life. When you start work, when you work with your tribe and your people, there is adventure. There is adventure. We need to take advantage of that. For all of the people who are sitting in this room today, you need to be involved in that adventure, that journey, a nation building, because that's who you're going to become. And I can see in maybe 10 years, within 10 years or better, that you could have a tribal college here. We are willing to, I'm going to just, I brought some materials with me. And I know there's a strong interest with the Michif language here. And our community, Turtle Mountain, put this dictionary together, 365 pages. And I'm going to give this to Chairman as a start with your language program. Maybe you have, I don't know if you have that, I don't think you do. But we also did a little booklet here about 5-6 years ago on who I am. Maybe it's something you want to do, or it talks a little bit about Little Shell in here. But I'm going to give 3 of these books here to, I'll give you 4. And then with a recent project that we did just about 3 years ago, we actually kind of added to the dictionary. And it's the Michif language word list by one of our elders, one of our very fluent speakers, Ella McLeod. And I'm going to pass this on to the council. I'm going to also, I know that you're interested in classes and courses here in Great Falls and the surrounding area. And I'm going to give you a couple catalogs to go along with that. And if we can work and partner with the people here, online courses, classes, or maybe someone wants to teach a class here, where you have somebody who can teach a class, fluent speaker, whatever. But all of our courses are in here. We offer about 500 different classes per year, but per quarter, about 250. I'm pleased to say that we're probably going to have a record graduation class this year. As a tribal college, we're going to have roughly 170 graduates. 170 graduates. 40 years ago, you never would have thought that there would be a tribal college on the reservation graduating anybody. But with the hard work and effort that our people have done, and we can't discount the help of our congressmen and our state people and our other colleges, universities in North Dakota, and tribal colleges around the country, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So to say we can do this by ourselves, no, we would have never been able to do this by ourselves. And don't hesitate to ask for help, because There are a lot of people out there that want to help. You'll be surprised, the people out there that want to help. They just want to be asked. They want to be asked. So, and quarterly, on a quarterly basis, we had a Travel College Journal. I don't know if anybody read this. I know Nate sees this every quarter. We contribute to this. We pay for it. But again, it's another example of the Travel College Journal and the American Indian College Fund, you know, supporting our tribal colleges. You talk about the Cobell settlement. Tribal colleges are going to be the administrator for the $60 million scholarship fund. And I'm a part of that. Of course, all tribal colleges are a part of the American Indian College Fund. But that college fund was started 25 years ago. You know, we've reached our goal. We're going to reach our goal this year of raising $15.7 million. The majority of that money will go to scholarships for students. The Cobell scholarship funds will go to, you know, more than just the tribal colleges. So the reason I'm saying that, when you really think about the preservation of our language and culture, if you work hard enough, like tribal colleges have done over the years, you'll find a way. And you know, the American Indian Higher Education Consortium, one of the best organizations in this country as far as I'm concerned. The College Fund, probably one of the top 5 in this country in terms of any organization, fundraising organization. You know, very knowledgeable about how to raise funds. So to do work to preserve the language and culture, you got to have the team, you got to have the resources. And again, TMCC, along with the other 35 tribal colleges around the country, will have been working hard. And TMCC is committed, I can say, to working with you people here in Great Falls and the surrounding community. I'd like to be able to come back, or maybe the next step ought to be taking a little drive down the road, about a 12-hour drive, and come to our college and visit us. I think you'd be impressed. Again, thank you, Miigwech, and have a great day. I'm happy to be here. I also have 5 caps. I'm not going to get in the middle of any dispute or fight who gets what, but I thought on behalf of the college, I'll give you
Thanks, Dr. Davis. Okay, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. I think maybe we'll, after the next 2 speakers, we'll take a little break. It's not always easy to sit and listen to a lot of information coming out about schools and colleges and language and this sort of thing, because it's kind of academic, and you sit there and have to, receive a lot of information, and it's a lot of sitting. So we'll take a break after the next 2 speakers. It gives me a great pleasure, of course, to introduce the president of the Stone Child Community College in Rocky Boy, Montana. Dr. St. Pierre is the new college president there, and we're very delighted to have him come and be a part of our event today. So with that, let me have you welcome Dr. Nate St. Pierre.
Nelson Kiksepa, and Chikia in Boozhoo. Mr. Chairman, members of the council, friends, guests, and relatives, I wish you a good morning, a good day. It's really a pleasure to be here, an honor, in fact. There's something about these kinds of events, especially when people come together from the four sacred directions. And there's a lot of energy, a lot of positive, just power when people come together like this. And in some ways, it's a very strong, sort of a sacred power that we all bring. And it's so good to see, children, elders, visitors, guests, and the leadership of the Little Shell Chippewa. And so I'm very honored to be a small part of this. When I received a call from Mr. Gray I guess it's been a couple of weeks ago, we started sort of comparing notes. And in particular, we had something in common, and that was really the initial part of our conversation, and that was the language preservation project that we both have. And that's been mentioned a couple of times here. We're actually one of 2 tribal colleges in the state of Montana that was designated as the agency to carry out our language projects. Stonechild College at Rocky Boy and Chief Dullknife College in Lame Deer were designated as the 2 tribal college, whereas the other tribal communities, they have language programs and cultural programs that are carrying out those. So I want to share with you a little bit about our project today, but also touch upon something that President Davis also mentioned in terms of the collaboration. And I think that's sort of a common theme today that I'm hearing as well. I don't think we can overstate that need to share, to come together. We have a phrase that I like to use and to share in the Cree language, and we say, that means we learn from one another. And more importantly, I think we need to learn from one another. And there's so much going on in the world today, even the use of technology. You don't have to travel very far. Having a device, a computer, an iPad, or what have you, those things have made the world a lot smaller. And I think it creates some opportunities, not only to share, as I said, to that Kariskintotan idea, but just in bridging the information that we have. I wanted to share with you just a couple of items. Power up my computer here. But one of them is about, of course, native languages, and particularly how they relate to culture. I guess for myself, I was fortunate to grow up spending quite a fair amount of time around my grandparents on both sides of my family. On my mother's side, my grandfather, the late Joseph Henderson, was from the Great Falls community. But my grandparents primarily grew up at Rocky Boy speaking the Cree language. And so I was exposed to the language very young, but unfortunately, when my family moved away from the reservation, we really didn't carry that tradition on in terms of speaking the language in the home. And I'll come back to that point about supporting a native language in the home and how instrumental that is in preserving and perpetuating native languages. The upbringing I had was kind of walking in 2 worlds, as we sometimes say. And for me, it was sort of trying to balance that information. Sometimes it was a contradiction of information. The life ways, the beliefs, even the behaviors, the understandings, all those things were sort of thrown together. On my father's side of the family, both my paternal grandparents were products of boarding schools. And I remember a story that my grandmother used to tell when she was basically taken from her family. and at a very early age, I'm guessing it was around 5 or 6 years old, a very, very young child, taken away to a boarding school, speaking nothing but the Cree language, and of course removed from the home, and very seldom was allowed to come home. But when she did finally come home, it was so tragic because she could no longer understand her mother, my great-grandmother, because that Cree language that she was born into and was replaced by the English language, and she couldn't even communicate with her own mother. Luckily, she had an older brother that also went to the same boarding school, who somehow was able to hold on to some aspects of the language and be able to serve as a liaison to communicate amongst the child and the mother. Now, my grandmother eventually relearned the language, and so I think for her it was very fortunate. But that really made me think growing up of how valuable language was, because it was tied to who I was, my identity. Another story that I was told growing up was actually from my great-grandfather, whom I never met. But in the early days when the Rocky Boys Indian Reservation was first established, and by the way, that's been less than 100 years ago. But as I understood it, my great-grandfather spoke 6 languages: Chippewa, Cree, Michif, Assiniboine, French, and I understand he was also learning Japanese. Don't ask me why. But, and of course English, so maybe that's 7. But, in just 3 or 4 generations, at least at Rocky Boy, I mean, we've lost a lot. Part of our language program, and we've had sort of language curricula, lesson plans. Mr. Gray and Mr. Davis alluded to that earlier at Rocky Boy, that there's probably since the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, we've had attempts through our bilingual teacher training program to teach at least the very rudimentary skills of language in our schools. I'm happy to say that we still continue on with that, from early Head Start all the way up to the college level. But perhaps at best, I can say that that's rudimentary. And by that I mean, we teach people to count, to say their colors of, colors of the rainbow, the days of the week, the months of the year, basic conversation like greetings and so on. But interestingly enough, we found that, well, at least according to the last census that we've done, we have about 7,000 enrolled tribal members at Rocky Boy. Okay, we don't distinguish between Chippewa and Cree, but rather Chippewa Cree. That is our federal recognition. So about 7,000 enrolled members, of which about a little over 4,000 actually reside at Rocky Boy. For you visitors, Rocky Boy is the smallest reservation geographically in the state of Montana, and the one that was established the last. We were established in 1916. So of that 4,000 or so, roughly, I will say about half, maybe 45, closer to 45% to 50%, are under the age of 21. Okay. The number of native language speakers that we have, this is according to a study we just did not long ago, there are about 150 out of the 7,000 enrolled members that still speak a native language at Rocky Boy. Does anyone want to guess what that language is? Cree. We have, at least according to my count, 2 speakers of the Chippewa language, or Ojibwa. 2. Those 2 people, I would say, are 55 years or older. One gentleman is, I know he's over 70. So of the 150 or so Cree speakers, at least those who speak fluently, most of those are over the age of 50. And it doesn't take very much to figure out that, our language, while it's still intact, because we have a kind of a written form, like an alphabet, or a syllable as it's sometimes called, and on some of the linguists might even call it an orthography. Many of you have seen this. It's all, you can see and find it on the internet, both in the States and across the border to the north. We have 36 characters. We call them characters in our alphabet and language. We actually speak 3 different dialects of Cree at Rocky Boy. But for myself, anyway, I was never exposed to that. I was never taught the symbols, the phonetics, but rather the speaking. And like most languages, it's just passed on through the oral tradition. I would venture to say that a language, and this may be true of the 6,000 languages that are spoken in the world, that it's not memorized. You don't memorize a language. You can maybe recognize or memorize like the alphabet, the sounds, and those kinds of things, but language is not a part of, a memorization. We know that, at least in the Cree language, again, this is through some of our research in our project, that there's about 15,000 words, if you will, in the Cree language. And again, I understand there are many, many different dialects of Cree. We speak through 3 at Rocky Boy. And so, I used to be an adjunct instructor, a faculty member at Montana State University for a number of years. And I was in the area of Native American Studies. And I kind of did a little of everything, every from Indians 101 all the way up to, research level courses. And invariably, I would have a lot of students, ask me questions, what's it like to be Indian, or do all Indians wear your hair long, or all these kinds of questions. And so it was hard to, and I had a bag of tricks every time. I'd say, okay, here's the canned response. But I would often ask people as they came to the classroom and came to the settings, what do you think makes American Indians and Alaska Natives unique? No, I know. It's your language. No. 6,000 languages in the world. We're not unique. Languages all over. You all live on reservations. That's not true. And of all people, I'm sure the Little Shell Chippewa would know that. People respond. And so it's like, it's your beadwork or your artwork. I said, no, it's not. None of those things. Although I would say that partly you're correct in that. And so we had some conversation about that, and of course, I would sort of selfishly say, well, it's not even because we're the best-looking people in the world, but what makes us unique in this country and perhaps in the world is that we have a sort of a dual identity. We have a special legal relationship with our federal government. We're citizens, or if you will, of two nations, tribal nations, and our federal government. That's what makes us unique. Of course, there comes the discussion around language. What happens when we no longer have a language? We speak English. My computer must have died on me because I wanted to share with you some sort of statistics. I think Mr. Gray alluded to the fact earlier that at one time, prior to contact with European groups who came here and to settle and to colonize, there were over 600 native languages spoken. Probably a decade or so ago, there were 200 languages that survived amongst the 560-some federally recognized tribes, and there are a number of state recognized and those who are about to be recognized, I hope. And I'm definitely rooting for you in that respect. And now today there's something like 175, is that correct of what you said? 175. A friend of mine, the late Darrell Robes Kip, who was one of the founding members of the Pigon Institute, Blackfeet and Browning. I remember talking to him, and this goes back to when I was a college professor, some 20 years ago. When he talked about the survival of native languages, he used to say that of the 200 or so languages, native languages at that time, we were losing about 5 native languages per year. And so that within a matter of 50 years, we would be down to a small handful of languages that still be spoken by native people. And I kind of used to debate him about that. I said, I hope you're wrong, Daryl. And if I have anything to do with it, I'm not going to let that happen. Now, of course, you can't do that all by yourself. But it raised a flag, a red flag to me that we, as native people, need to do something. Not only to reclaim our language and our culture, but to preserve that and further to perpetuate that. And that's kind of the philosophy I've taken on at Stonechild, is we need to perpetuate not only our language but our culture. Years ago, over a century ago, as a matter of fact, there were sort of these anthropologists, linguists, that took a look at the erosion and the loss of native languages. And there were some that came up with this theory called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. And I don't know that they ever really proved anything, but they did come to an understanding through this hypothesis that language and culture are inextricably linked together. So the question was something like, is language a part of culture, or is culture a part of language? Well, they never resolved that, but no doubt that language and culture are connected. If you start losing one, eventually the other one will fade as well. Okay, that's sort of the other side of that, is that if you start increasing the usage and the reclamation of one, hopefully the other one will also increase. When I talk about culture, I'm not talking about, and this, interestingly enough, is when you talk about in mainstream culture in America, because if you go to Europe, and I've been there a number of times, they say, well, Americans don't even have any culture. You kind of lost connection with your homelands or whatever, and I'm sitting there like, what? My homeland is here. But anyhow, a lot of times mainstream culture, they talk about things like going to the theater, going to the opera, the performing arts, ballet, and those kinds of things. And that's not the kind of culture I'm talking about. Of course, if you talk to many laboratory scientists, they will say, well, culture is something you put in a little petri dish, and you grow this, and you find cures for this and that, and it's sort of the medical culture, the laboratory culture. And that's not what I'm talking about either. When I'm talking about culture, I'm specifically talking about our cultures, our rituals, our ceremonies, our lifeways, our cosmologies, our beliefs, our mores, our understanding of what our worldview is. I actually started teaching early on in my career, at a time when no one really heard of a tribal college, at least in Montana, and certainly no one ever heard of Stonechild College. After I had graduated with my bachelor's degree, I went home and I asked, the college president at the time, do you have any opportunities here? And so eventually I was hired there, and that was way back in the mid '80s or so. And I left the college after a couple of years teaching and working there, and learning a lot about the tribal college. And I actually returned to graduate school. And I always kept in the back of my mind that someday I'm going to return to that college. I don't know, in what capacity, but someday I want to go back, because I think there's something there. There are these seeds of hope, as I call them, that someday I'm going to go back. Well, I went on and I finished a master's degree and eventually finished a doctorate degree. And I came home to Rocky about almost 11 years ago, and I served as an administrative position. I worked there and left again to pursue other career interests. And about a year ago, I heard that there was an opening, or an opportunity again, and I put my name in the hat, and I was selected last July as the 5th president in the history of Stonechild College, which, by the way, on May 17th, just a couple of weeks away, we will celebrate our 30th anniversary as a tribally controlled college. And so that is something, to me, that's quite remarkable. How we have made it that far. And of course, as I met with President Davis yesterday when he came over to Stonechild, I said, you know, there's a lot that we have to work from and a lot that we have to be proud of. But I'm already looking to the next 30 years and even beyond that. So if I can play a small role in assuring that not only our culture, our language, our academic programs, and opportunities for young people are going to be sound and safe well into the future, I think then that will be something that I can say that I'm very proud of. But the language project that I spoke of, we were fortunate, like the other awards that were given to the tribes in the state. The senator who really sponsored, the state senator who sponsored that bill, which eventually became law, is from Rocky Boy, Senator Jonathan Windy was. Some of you know Jonathan. What had happened was they worked with the State Tribal Economic Development Commission to secure some $2 million. Now I know that sounds like a lot of money. It's probably more money than I've seen, even as a college president. But they divided those funds equally amongst these 8 projects, 8 tribal projects, so about $250,000 each. What we decided to do in our project was to focus on sort of the technology side of language preservation. And so we did kind of an environmental scan. We looked at what was already out there. And I know in Canada they've done some tremendous things, at least with the Cree language. We knew that the largest or the most widely spoken native language in North America is Algonquin, the language family of Algonquin. You know, you have Chippewa, Cree, Blackfeet, Northern Cheyenne, and there's dozens of other tribes that speak an Algonquin language. So we knew that there were already things going on out there. And I mentioned earlier at Rocky Boy Schools when President Davis and Mr. Gray had done some work building these curriculum guides and language programs. And so we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So